Hey, gang, we're getting started a little differently today here on Baseball Biz on Deck. We're going to give the band X Take RUX a break, and instead we're going to start with some music from our special guest, Danny Rockett, today. So let's get started.
For the pennant, they're not gonna try. They'll DFA and trade a few guys. Nobody is coming to town. Won't sign anyone that Cub fans will like. And next year they'll probably go on strike. Nobody is coming to town. Tom Ricketts wants a payroll that's lower than the Rays. But Lester, Chatwood, Schwarbs, and Q all still need to be replaced. The next few years will be in decline. No free agents are gonna get signed. Nobody is coming. Nobody is coming. Nobody is coming to town.
Welcome to Baseball Biz. I'm Mark Harbert, your host, and with me today, I have the most avid Cub fan I know. That's Mr. Danny Rockett. Hey, Danny, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing great. Enjoying an off day, actually, a Cubs off day. It's after a rousing weekend down at the friendly confines.
Yeah, I mean, gee, Manise, I've loved watching the Cubs. Loved it so much I was supposed to be there last Thursday, but some family things popped up. Somebody got ill. We couldn't make it. And I was looking at that night. It was Thursday, and the skies were crazy looking that night, man. It looked like the fire was in the sky.
Yeah, it was bright orange sky, real low clouds. It really did look like it was Armageddon time. I mean, it was maybe a harbinger of doom because the Cubs lost 3 or 4 to the Dodgers this weekend. So,
well, and you guys, what do you got them twice or you got them coming up again, or did y'all just play them before?
We just played them twice, and in the strange schedule that is this year's scheduling, where the teams are they're playing everybody and only playing division rivals twice. It's really strange. We're done with the Dodgers now, completely done. We don't see them again. So that's just, it's strange.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, twice in 1 week.
Well, you mentioned that. And I said on a previous show, we're looking at the Marlins and the Yankees. They played so many games and they're not going to play again till September, and they're in the same freaking division. So figure that out, because I can't. Balanced schedule, I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. I like the idea of being in front of every one of the other 29 teams. To me, that's exciting. You get to see everybody, even if it's just on TV, but you get to see your team against every other team.
Yeah, I mean, I just living so close to places like Milwaukee and Cincinnati being a pretty short drive, I do kind of miss the fact that I don't have as many opportunities to go catch the Cubs on the road, because Cub fans are kind of like deadheads in that way. And we like to travel and hang out in the town and got to take it over. It drives Reds fans nuts. Like my friends that are Reds fans from Cincinnati, they hate us. They like me, but they hate us as a group. So that's one drawback. I guess it's somewhat interesting to get to see every single team, like, Ohtani's. I think we're playing there, actually. I'm not actually sure. But to see Ohtani and Trout, that usually would only happen, once every 3 years, maybe.
Yeah.
Or coming to your town, maybe once every 6 years or something like that. It's one positive of it. But St. Louis is close by. Talk about schedule abnormalities. The Cubs will be done with St. Louis in July this year. So if you have some division race going on between the Cubs and the Cardinals, which is storied rivalry, it's going to be done not in a head-to-head combat way. So it's, to me, that's less interesting. If I'm like, oh, well, we're playing Baltimore, it's like, well, everybody's just scoreboard watching at that point. So, but yeah, it's got its drawbacks and it's got, I guess, advantages too.
Well, it's like everybody moves the furniture around in the room, and I've got a blindfold on, man. It's like I'm trying to figure out what things are going on, but and when I'm going to be able to see the different teams play. But that's okay. I didn't do a proper introduction for you, Danny. We're speaking again with Mr. Danny Rockett. He's a musician. I said he's an avid Cub fan, and you're playing on stage. My gosh, you're everywhere, bud. We were talking before we actually started recording about how busy you are right now. But at the beginning, we played a little recording. We'll talk about it in a moment. And that's about, I think, back in 2020, around the beginning of the pandemic, and what was happening with the Cubs at that point. My gosh, man. Jed Hoyer and the Ricketts, fans felt a little lonely back then, didn't they?
Yeah, it was all happened quite quickly between Tom Ricketts announcing biblical losses from the pandemic and then basically doing a few white flag trades. Like you kind of knew it was the beginning of the end when they traded Darvish for a bunch of teenagers. And at that point, the Cub fans were like, what is going on? Like they were promising us not just they wanted to thread the needle and keep part of the core together, and like your Rizzos and your Bryants and your Baez. Like we all expected that they were going to keep one of those players on the team to kind of have a through line for the team. They got rid of all of them pretty much the same day. And it ripped the heart out of Chicago. Now, whether they were good baseball decisions, I mean, so far it seems like, except for the Rizzo, it seems like that they did some smart moves. Baez hasn't been very good in Detroit. Chris Bryant has continued to have trouble staying on the field with injuries, and that has affected his performance. Maybe in retrospect, I mean, Darvish, though, it would have been nice to still have him on this team right now. It really was a very transitionary thing, but they really they pulled the rug out, and there was a big hole underneath that rug, and we all fell down in the hole. And I've never seen Wrigley so empty. It went from the walls shaking every day and being playoff bound pretty much every year to just a pretty bleak outlook. So they said they were going to try to be a little bit more consistent with the team. That does not seem to be the case. We might be getting back to it.
Well, I was wondering, because I was looking at your all's lineup the other day, a couple of games ago, and I'm looking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys who were not with you before. I mean, we were looking at Dansby Swanson, from Atlanta. We're looking at Bellinger from the Dodgers. Suzuki from Japan. Hosmer, he'd been with you, I think, a little bit though, but he'd been with the Kansas City and Boston. Mancini, Baltimore, and then where was he? He was with Houston for a bit, and then Torrens is coming your way too. So yeah, there they are, 6 guys. Bang! I said, who are these guys? I mean, obviously I knew who they were, but I hadn't been paying enough attention to realize they were all be wearing Cubs uniforms this year.
Yeah, I mean, what they did was a kind of a reset of the roster and got a bunch of. Well, let's see. In the case of like somebody like Cody Bellinger, so the Dodgers didn't want to pay it. What he was going to get in arbitration, so he was available, and so the Cubs went and snatched him up, and he's a professional ball player. They're veterans. Eric Hosmer, veteran. Mancini, who's been on his team for 7 years, something like that. They got a platoon situation going on over there. Seiya Suzuki is a little bit older, played many years in Japan. These guys know what they're doing. They're a little bit older. We have no stars. They're all like 2-win players, something like that. And they're kind of waiting on some of the kids. There's a lot of excitement down at AAA. In fact, a lot of Cub fans right now are really scratching their heads at some of the performances of these, like specifically who I just mentioned, Mancini and Hosmer. We're not getting any production out of the first base position. So everybody's, pounding the drum right now to bring up this young stud who hit like 30 home runs last year in the minors. And he's doing the same thing this year in AAA, called Matt Mervis. They call him Mash Mervis, of course, because he mashes. And everybody's, banging the drum. We got Christopher Morel, who was with the team last year. Fan favorite, too, because he's got a lot of personality, a lot of fun to watch. Really nice guy. I've met a few times now. Really cool dude. He's riding the bus in AAA, too. It doesn't make any sense to people when you're carrying like a third catcher who doesn't really hit. When you're carrying like Edwin Rios and you just don't even play him. Like he just doesn't even play. So you're like, well, we have these dudes. and I don't know, and it seems like a no-brainer. Like, there's a lot of clamoring for like DFAing Hosmer and bring this kid up, just do a 1-for-1 swap, throw him on the 40-man. But they're playing what I call 40-man footsie right now. And they're going to do it's a very business-like approach to how to put together a ball club. And they're going to go probably 40 days. They're going to get through one quarter of the season, and they're going to reassess where they're at and what their schedule looks like. And they're going to sit down in front of their computers and their spreadsheets and actually probably have the computer tell them what to do and not even have a thought process. It's the way things work these days. I have a feeling that that'll be the point where they'll take a look at what's going on in the minors, who we got, and who's performing on this team, and whether they truly want to win this year. Because I think they just wanted to get a team that would go 500 and sell $30 beer bats in the bleachers. What they're promoting is a big party at Wrigley Field, and it is. But if they can go 500 and have a few guys that you've heard of and a couple of fan favorites that'll be around, like they just locked up Happ for another 3 years. They extended Horner by 1 year. But, so there's some guys you like. So they're trying to just get it. You got Stroman, he's kind of a fan favorite. He's got a lot of personality and style. And they're just trying to get guys you've heard of out there so they sell those beer bats. So I'm not convinced that they're really, truly trying to win or just keep us interested enough to watch and not have to spend the big money. I don't even know if you could spend the big money right now. I guess if you wanted to flip and assign, for Shohei Ohtani right now, give him 5 of your best prospects and get a half a year Ohtani. I don't see him doing that. That's kind of the state of the Cubs right now. Like you said, I went to the game with my mom and I spent most of the time telling her, oh yeah, that guy was from the Padres and this guy's from the Dodgers and this guy's, from the Orioles. And so she's like, whatever. They're wearing Cubs uniforms, you root for the laundry, but I would imagine that if the Cubs are sitting around 500 and not really competing by the trade deadline, I'm really guessing that some of these 1 year dudes are going to be on the block and they're just going to keep shoring up their farm, fill some holes that they see in their next year's team. I'm unconvinced that this is real for them this year,
I hope that's not the case, my friend. I hope there's real decision there. I hope if they do make some trades throughout the year, that it's going to be something that continues to shore you guys up. You were talking about going with the laundry. And I think the longer that I've been a fan, the more I don't see the laundry and I see the players. And I was looking the other day with you guys with the Dodgers, and there I'm seeing Mookie Betts out there. Well, I watched him when I was a big fan of Tampa, still am. And watched him out in right field throw a ball all the way deep up against the wall, all the way over to third to get it out. And it just blew my mind. It wasn't a bounce or anything. It was just boom. But you follow people. There he was back then. Who was that with? He was with Boston back then. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you follow the different players. With me, I had Willie Adames with Tampa. I still follow him with what he does with Milwaukee, forgive me. But there's players that you've enjoyed watching and seem to just kind of trek them through their careers as well. Right now you guys got Stroman, and what he just hit his 1,000th hit. He just
1,000th strikeout.
1,000th strikeout. Thank you.
Yeah. And he also got it. He is now equal with 69 wins and 69 losses after losing to the Dodgers on that was just yesterday, actually, right? Yeah, I think it was just yesterday that all that happened. So no, we've got some guys, and a lot of these guys, like you mentioned, have played on many different teams. Stroman has had a few teams already as well. It's rooting for the players. There's the rise in that's going on. I think a lot of it is you have kind of fantasy sports to thank. Because, you instead of just like being very team centric, like I really am, I'm really more of a team centric guy. Like we go and play the Mariners. I'm like, I don't know who any of these guys are, or what, or a few, except for the guys that were on the Reds, like those are the only ones I know. But those kind of situations, when people are more into the players, I think it's because of they're putting their roster together on their fantasy team and they're looking up more players, and you've got the information at your fingertips, Baseball Reference and Fangraphs and all that stuff. You can look anybody up and they really get quite a bit of information. To what extent that is predictive or not, I don't know, but people seem to think they could read the tea leaves and gamble on it, and all such a weird sport. It's like, you can't really, I never think that. In fact, like, I would even say it's opposite. Like, if a guy was awesome out of the bullpen last year, don't get him. Because, next year he's going to be bad. I'll have this like every other year bullpen. Few guys are top-notch Hall of Famers that just dial it up every year. But with bullpens, they're fickle. And those pitchers, they have an obvious shirt here that the bullpen wears, and it says "failed starter," because they all are.
Oh, man, I get that. I tell you, I know originally I used to be so upset with Eric Neander, the guy who's the GM, et cetera, for the Rays. And one of my first things years ago, he traded away Evan Longoria. I thought, what the hell? And then I started seeing what he was doing. I thought, okay, I get what you're building now. I hate to see him go, but the people he brought in bit by bit, you were making a difference. And I'm looking at you guys too. I'm jumping here a little bit, but I did want to ask you about pitching. I know you guys brought up Assad. You've got some guys that are out, but Drew Smyly the other day, my gosh, that man is amazing, isn't he?
Yeah, he had one bad start to begin the season, and then he's been throwing this. He basically throws his curveball all day long, is what he's been doing. It's this new knuckle curve that he's doing. Nobody can hit it. Jan Gomes, our catcher, was talking about him having two different curveballs, and like the Dodgers, he nearly had a perfect game. I actually had a pretty good seat to this game. It was a nice day in Chicago, and I was sitting right down the third base line and really watched his pitching performance up close. And that play that ruined the perfect game happened really right in front of me, because it happened right down the third base line, right where I was sitting. And you could do nothing but laugh. Like, I could not. The crowd was just shocked, mouths agape, when Jan Gomes goes tumbling over Drew Smyly. What a weak contact. That was such a weak contact hit too. It was going to be a tough play either way, but probably Gomes's ball, but a lot of adrenaline in the moment. And something that we're going to argue about on the SonRanto show, my podcast, because me and my co-host Michael Cotton disagree about something. And that was that I was kind of glad it ended partially because Drew Smyly has spent quite a bit of time on the IL. The Cubs were actually the team that rehabbed him. And I'm looking at this. He's getting near 100 pitches. I think the top amount of pitches he's ever thrown was 108 in a game. And at least within the last few years since surgery, he's not slated to pretty much pitch more than 130 innings, maybe, would be the most that you'd think that he could do, at least without hurting him. And then, so I'm like, when the no-hitter ended, I'm good. I said, good, Ross can pull him. And, my co-host says, what do you mean pull him? It could have been destiny. I'm like, well, if it's the ninth inning and it's still happening, like, he's going to leave him in. But if he's like a pitch 115, 116, 117, and who knows? Because he would have definitely started the ninth at around 100 pitches easily. So I don't know. I was at Johan Santana's no-hitter in New York City back in 2012 or whenever that happened, about 10 years ago, whatever. And he barely ever pitched again after that. He went 130 some odd pitches, and he was same thing. He had been on the injured list, and they let him go with this no-hitter, which wasn't really a no-hitter, by the way. If there had been reviews back then, there was a fair ball that went down the line that was called foul. It was definitely fair. I don't know if that's even reviewable. I was hearing this other podcast talk about this guy, Brendan Miller, who's a smart guy, knows a lot about pitching. And he was talking about how, speaking of things being predictive or not in the stats, that none of Smyly's pitches really rate very highly in comparison to other pitchers in terms of stuff, but it's effective. So to me, if something's effective, doesn't that eventually change the stats, and doesn't it make the stats that you're looking at actually not predictive? It's the opposite. It's like, because those new stats of Drew Smyly's curveball are now going to show up in those stats and move the needle ever so slightly and change what those predictive, quote in quotes, stats were supposed to be saying. He pitches backwards. It's weird. Cool. He's a lefty. They're crafty lefties. Every good rotation should have one.
I like that. I like what you're saying too about basically the industry of baseball needs to figure him out, because the measuring stick they have right now just isn't accurate for what he's able to deliver. The results that he's delivering, guess what, boys and girls, you're going to have to look at it again. So I'm not surprised. I'm excited. I'm excited about watching him and looking at some of the other guys you have on there too. Jameson Taillon, is he still out injured or?
Yeah, he just got hurt, which is a shame because he had a couple of stinkers to start his Cubs career, and then seemed to pull it together, had a nice outing, and then next thing you know, he's hurting, and Assad's coming up and doing a spot start. And so, yeah, that hurts. That's basically your number 3 starter. The other one who hasn't really performed as much as we had hoped was a guy named Hayden Wesneski, who's got a real wicked slider. He's a rookie. We got him from the Yankees in a trade last year, and everybody's real excited about him because he struts around the mound and he's got a lot of confidence. He's fun to watch, but it's so far in this season, it hasn't gone very well for him. He's getting hit around a lot. So what's one strange thing is, like, I know now that he's with the big league club, they have this pitch lab. I think every team pretty much has it, where they go and measure everything and give you all this data. And they're always tinkering with guys, giving them extra pitches. One thing that's been noticeable for Hayden Wesneski is that his velocity is slightly up. But when his velocity is up, it seems like his pitches don't move quite as well. And so they can hit him. So unless your velocity is 103, it's not really necessarily worth going from, 93 to 95 if it means that you lose some movement. So I don't know if that's what's going on, but definitely is not going the same as it did in his rookie year last year when he first came up with the club. So get a nice spring training too. So it's a little disappointing. The back end of the rotation, the Assad, who I just mentioned too, really awesome in the World Baseball Classic. I love watching him pitch for Team Mexico. He's got a lot of style. He wears those big old Harry Carey goggles. And he came up last year as a starter. They used him, and he was quite effective. This year, they've been using him out of the pen as a long man, and it hasn't been good. So he did get the one start to spell Taillon when Taillon went to the injured list, but he wasn't very good in that game either. And he's not stretched out either yet. So they tried to send him down to AAA to stretch that out, but it didn't work. Who we're really waiting on right now is Kyle Hendricks. Yeah, you're going to need to get through at least. He's going to start a rehab assignment soon. Apparently, he's hitting his speeds right now. Everything's going well with his rehab. So that would be a big boon to this rotation. We still don't have a full-fledged ace, but we got a lot of know-how and veteran leadership on the staff. It's a pitch to contact kind of group, and it's a pretty good defense to back it up. So if you pitch it and catch it, you can do a lot with that. So far, the offense has held up for the most part. Surprisingly so, too. I think it was just a lot of guys kind of picking each other up. If it wasn't, so it's been going well. I mean, I think we're 12-9.
Yeah, wow,
that.
Yeah, you guys. I was looking at your winnings percentage right now, like about 571. So I mean, you're there right in the middle of NL Central. Let's see, the Brewers are at 682, Cardinals 409. Forgive me for saying that out loud. Pirates at 696, and the Reds at 318. Pirates at 696. I'm sorry, if I was a betting man, I would have lost the house, man.
Yeah, well, if you just bet on April, sure. But I don't think the Pirates have really played any good teams yet. So I wouldn't put too much stake in it. They lost to O'Neal Cruz, their shortstop, to a crazy injury. They played, let's see, the Pirates, they played the Reds. Actually, they lost to the Reds. They beat the Red Sox, who I believe are in last place in the East.
Oh, yeah.
They the White Sox, who have had a terrible start to their year. Then they beat the Cardinals, who also have had a terrible start to their year. And then they swept the Rockies. They swept the terrible Reds. When you got a week of playing the Rockies and the Reds, they won 7 straight. At some point, I'll stand up and take notice. Maybe if they sweep the Dodgers right now,
There you go.
then maybe I'll look into it. How about if they'll play the Rays in early May? So let's see if they can run through that gauntlet.
Oh gosh, it's been nuts, man. I mean, they've had a home run every game. I don't have the percentage in front of me, but I mean, I think it's like, what is it, 19-3, 20-3. It's an amazing number at this point, and it's dumbfounding. I want to go back to something you were saying a moment ago about Assad and seeing some of these guys in the World Baseball Classic. To me, when I saw with my own team with Randy Rosarina and some of the other guys looking at from Kansas City, Perez, seeing these guys out there playing for these other teams. As a fan, there's a lot of excitement to build up with me. And I think even with those players, there was an excitement that they brought along with them into this season. I'm digressing a little bit because I never do that. But coming back to the NL Central, I'm with you, man. Like only 14% of the games have been played thus yet. In the Rays, some have criticized as far as who we played thus far. And I get that. But there is an energy there, and I'm not sure how that's going to play out the rest of the year. We're going to have stretches where things don't look great, and that's just part of baseball. Thank God. Otherwise, we'd be bored to death. It's an exciting time. So looking at the NL Central, what do you think it's going to be looking like come game 162?
I mean, we were joking before the season even started that a 500 team could take it, because on paper, it was a weak division, one of the weaker divisions. Right now, that's not what it looks like. I am curious, obviously it's going to change as the year goes on, but you look at some of the powerhouses in the East, we haven't faced them yet. Atlanta, the Mets, we're facing Miami this weekend. They've had a pretty good start to the year, similar to us. We face San Diego this week, not off to a great start, but maybe they're starting to put together. They certainly have better players than the Cubs do. So we haven't faced any of those kind of teams yet. We've faced pretty good teams, though. We've faced the Dodgers and stuff, but we lost the season series to them. So I had this team at 81-81. I don't think Cardinals have very good pitching. I think they are pretty much a 500 team. I think Cincinnati stinks. They have no players. I think Pittsburgh is going to emerge at some point soon because they've just been stocking these draft picks and they'll never spend money, which Bob Nutting is just like really a criminal to baseball because he won't spend any money. But the last time when the Cubs were good in 2015, 2016, that kind of golden era for us, Pittsburgh was right there as well. They had a lot of great pitching. They all traded it all to the Yankees and Astros. Milwaukee, they're kind of it's interesting with them because they're in the last year of a bunch of guys and they got some expiring contracts and some that expire the year after. So if it's indicative at all what they did with that Hader trade last year when they traded Josh Hader,
yeah,
that's pretty nutso to be trading your elite closer. And he had some bad outings. I think everybody knew that Hader would be back and doing well. He just had an off year, but they traded him. And I wonder if that's more what they're going to be doing. But it's hard to do those white flag trades when you're in first place. So fans hate that. Let's just put it that way. They would hate that. And I do wonder what's going to happen. But I'm seeing the Cubs end up really about 81. There's a deviation from there where they could be 5 games better than that, and that might be enough to win this division. I don't know. Even so, the Cubs don't have a big 1-2 punch. Milwaukee has the best pitching. St. Louis has probably the best hitting in the division. Cubs are just kind of like a working man's 2-win above replacement baseball team of no stars at all. Pittsburgh's got the emergent dudes, and Cincinnati ain't got nothing. They've got some young talent, I know, in their system, but it's going to be a second. They're only 7-15, so it's a competitive division, I would say. It's one of the reasons why I kind of wish we played those extra series against each other, because I think it's fun to make hay against you. Beat the teams that you have to beat to take your division. That to me is more exciting. I'm curious as to how we'll play against the other division. So far, so good. I mean, Cubs have surprised and opened some eyes this year so far by playing well. But we had the Rangers. They're decent. It's all been 2 or 3 winning series. But I don't know. It's once you get into the season and you don't necessarily have the depth of a really solid 5th starter, or you get some injuries, or some guys go all into the slump at the same time. We don't know what this team is because everybody was on a different team last year. So we don't know what their chemistry is. They like to have dinner on Sunday nights, apparently, but they're boring dudes. Like this is not like your 2016 Cubs with all those personalities and being a lot of fun. It's just not. Even if this team were to go really far, people still might not really even know who's on the team.
Oh my gosh. I think about 2016 a lot, breaking that 100 years, waiting for something to happen. The Billy Goat curse, all that. Joe Madden, my gosh. By the way, let's talk about Joe for just a minute. He meant so much to the growth of what happened in Chicago with the Cubbies. He brought in guys like Zobrist, et cetera. It was just amazing to watch that team come together. But as you and I were saying earlier, it sounds like it got kind of picked apart shortly thereafter, where all those players are going to be, et cetera. So the excitement that was built up was taken away. But coming back to Madden, you think we'll ever see him come back as a manager?
I don't know. And I'm going to get a chance to ask him later this summer at an event that they're doing over at this place called Club 400, do a lot of charity events. And I usually play music at them, either solo or with Bleacher Bum Band, which is my band. So maybe I'll ask him, hey, you're going to come back? Because you saw a situation like Cubs just played the Rangers. There was Bruce Bochy, and he, after years and years in San Francisco, won those World Series in those even years in the beginning of just about was that 2012, 2014, 2010, I think is when they were winning. So he came back with the Rangers. I think what happened with Joe and the Angels was the analytics guys were getting into the dugout. And it's funny because Joe's one of the guys that actually was the first one to use analytics to do things on the baseball field that were at the time unconventional. The shift. I don't know if he's the first one to use it, but he definitely was one of the earliest to really adopt it and use it all the time. Joe Madden with the Rays made teams full of a lot of no-name guys successful. They became household names later, but the Rays, not a lot of people, they're not clocking that team so much unless you're AL East. But yeah, a lot of success there. He did things in such an unorthodox manner, whether it be it having a petting zoo or theme trips, but made sure that baseball stayed fun. Those were really fun years. He had a lot of personalities and he curated them well. Nobody was picking the Cubs to truly, they were thinking more like 2017, 18 would be really when the window would hit, when all the rookies had a little bit more experience. Because in 2015 and 16, everybody came up then. Let's see, Javi came up in 2014 at the end of it, and Javier Baez, and then Bryant came up in 15. And so anyway, they were predicting them to go to win a little bit after they did, when they did. So 2016, they were almost like too young and dumb to know that about the curse and expectations. And so I think it happened exactly the right way. And it barely happened, by the way. They had to go 7 games and come back from a 3-1 deficit. All the crazy stories that we went through back then. But Joe Madden was the right guy to, I think, manage those youthful personalities. And I think what happened is that by 2017, 18, you got the same guys. They didn't change anything. And after 2018, they didn't really add to it anymore. It was just subtracting from this core. So I partly blame some bad decisions from Theo Epstein, to be honest. When they fell a little bit too, he said this, fell a little bit too in love with their guys, and they probably should have moved on from some of their talent and at least switched up the personnel a little bit to get some churn in it, because it got a little long in the tooth. The offense broke. And that's another thing that Theo admitted. The offense broke, and then he did nothing to fix it. So you have these very talented hitters, but they were all kind of the same guy. They would all be selling out on every pitch trying to hit a home run. And there was no diversity to the offense. You didn't have a lot. Once Ben Zobrist was gone in that, like, it was terrible what happened. He got divorced and just this whole mess, and you took all this personal time. But once you lose that kind of OBP out of your lineup, you had nobody on base for when those home runs were hit. So you have to have a diversity in the way that you score your runs. And sometimes it's got to be get them over, get them in, make productive outs, set up your lineup in ways where you might have a doubles hitter right in front of a lefty, so you can get him to third with one out, so you can get a sac fly. Things like that. Those are all baked into that runs created plus or whatever, or WRC plus stat. How are you creating these runs? And like the 2016 Cubs, they scored a lot of runs. They did, but after a time, it was all the same bat over and over again, and they'd all go cold at the same time. It was the craziest thing. Like, you see all these big offensive names, Chris Bryant, Javier Baez, Anthony Rizzo, and they're winning games 1-0, like for an entire years. They're in the middle of the pack, and it was just a real head scratcher, like why they weren't able to go further again, like 2017, and that was pretty much it.
I don't think players consciously lay down, okay? But I do believe the players can get comfortable. And whether it's a team, and if you're sitting there with all these guys in the dugout, I mean, I remember when I worked at the newspaper in Louisville, and we'd finish up doing all the press, putting the paper together every night, 2:00 in the morning, go across the bar, and we would drink. But I mean, what I'm getting at was there was a familiarity with all of us there. We'd go back and we put a paper together the next night, and it was basically doing the same thing over and over again. There was nothing extra that was happening, even though we did good thing there as far as getting that work done. There was never anything that exploded beyond that. There weren't new people coming in and coming out. There weren't new ideas. Oh, let's do things different here. The big thing that came in was something called digital. But yeah, but
it happened to you.
Oh, brother, I had to shift gears real quickly, and that's the thing too. I mean, the game changes around you, and these teams have to change as well. And I think there's something for players when they leave. I keep going on about Willie Adames. He's doing much, much better with the Brewers than he did with us. He did well with us. You're going to find some players when they move to another environment that actually they grow, they become better. And the same happens for that team. If they bring in some new blood, it affects the other people around the team. And you see some older players come in, and you're saying, I'm glad to bring that guy in because he's got a perspective they haven't seen. They got all these young guys. He can be that unofficial coach and still give a warmth to them as a player and give more guidance. So when you see those situations, I think that's where you see growth in a team, and it comes from change.
Yeah, and I do think that is part of it. There was a certain comfortability. I don't know if there was too much poison. I've heard a few things as time has gone on, and a little bit more information's kind of coming to light about some of the personalities that were in that clubhouse. And I think that it was time to move on. It's almost like a band that has a really great few albums, and then they toured a lot, and one guy got married, and another guy got is a drunk, and then all of a sudden the band's not really working out. They put another album together. It's not as good because they're not. And then it's time to start some solo careers and get some new bands. That's kind of what I liken it to in that way. Sometimes these things have played themselves out. It's like having a job and, this job's been good, but I don't want to do this anymore. I want a new kind of job. That's kind of what this is. As much as I'm surprised they didn't keep at least one guy from that core. They let Wilson Contreras walk this year.
Oh, Lord.
So, and I talk about a little inside baseball. It's like they didn't like him. They didn't like Wilson Contreras. He didn't listen to them. Yeah, they had a lot of stats guys and analytics dudes telling Wilson what to do, and sometimes he would just go do what he wanted to do anyway and call the game how he wanted to do it. But obviously, a great bat, fiery, really fired up the clubhouse, fan favorite. People love me. He was part of that 2016 squad, and really now the only guy left is Kyle Hendricks, and he's hurt. So coming back, but Anthony Rizzo, I think a lot of Cub fans were a little disappointed because they envisioned him. Maybe if he had stayed with the team, like he's getting a statue someday. He'd get a statue out in Gallagher Way in our statue garden. But now that's not going to happen. None of those guys are getting statues. Not one of them. Probably Ricketts will build a statue of himself hoisting the trophy that he paid for.
Oh, that sounds about right with a lot of owners, I got to tell you. Hey, let's go back to the fun part, man. The fun part being the fans. You're an avid fan. One of the things, I follow you on Twitter, is I love the weather report that you give, dude. Give me a weather report. Can you give me one?
Sure. I'd be like, hi, this is Danny Rockett with another Cubs Wrigley Field weather report. I am a mile north of Wrigley Field right now. And as I look out my window, I can see that the sun is trying to peek out behind the blue skies. But unfortunately, it is a little bit cold today, but there is no game. So there will be no freezing fans at Wrigley Field tonight. The wind would be blowing slightly out had there been a game, but there is no game. And go Cubs. So so those are the dumbest things. So during the pandemic, there was no baseball, but I do live a mile north of Wrigley Field, and I would go on these walks. They weren't letting anybody in the park because, our brilliant mayor thought you could get COVID from the ducks or something. I don't know what she was thinking. I don't think they wanted people congregating is what it was. But anyway, so I'd go on these walks, and they just want to tell you to keep it moving, no sitting at park benches next to people and things like that. So I'd go on walks around Wrigley Field. Every day I just started going down there. And there's no game, and the season was 2 months late starting. It didn't start till July. No, 3 months late starting. So I'd go around Wrigley Field, beautiful days outside, take these walks and give the weather report. There's nothing else to do, just go down to Wrigley Field, say, everybody, I'm down here by Wrigley. There's no game, but here's what the weather's like. There were a lot of, also riots and stuff like that happening that year. If you remember, Chicago had a few situations where police and protesting and things like that. So that was kind of part of it too, because Chicago, we get dragged through the mud like nationally as a city. It's kind of one of the things that I always want to do is make fun of that idea, because not that we don't have our problems, every big city does, but we're a big city, and I swear to God, some people think we're just dodging bullets. All over the place here. So that's kind of one of the things that I wanted to point out. So like that summer, I just did a lot of these reports, and also they called us a hellscape. They called Chicago a hellscape. So I would take pictures of these beautiful scenes and call it a hellscape just to mess with people. And tumultuous times breed, I'm a big fan of Abby Hoffman, who is in the Yippies, who they played they played a lot of pranks. And so I enjoyed that way of communicating both politically and as a Cubs fan. I know a lot of sports journalists don't use a heck of a lot of humor and art in their journalism. It's just not their thing. But I don't come at it that way. I'm a musician first, and then I'm more a Cubs personality entertainer kind of thing. As my show is called the SonRanto Show, because it is a show, you know what I mean? And we try, like we do this bit, like it's a timer where you spin the wheel, and the wheel's called, we got the pitch clock. So on the show, we have the bitch clock. So you spin the wheel, and anybody spins the wheel, and they get like a grievance, and it's all our fans that they've come up with this list of grievances that we have about the team or whatever it is. And then you spin the wheel, and it comes on on one of the grievances, and then you have a minute to bitch about it, to spout off. we do things like that on the show. And so that it's just like a different approach, I think, to it. I talked to a guy who works for the CHGO, which is a new outlet in town, covering the Cubs. They do a daily podcast, things like that. Young guys, really nice. And it's funny. I said, he's like, because he went to school. All the guys there went to school for journalism. They all went for sports journalism. And he's like, we're trying to be the outlet that's like the real fans, that we tell it like it is, and we're the real fans. I'm like, well, you can't do that because you got a guy up in the booth. You can't say how it really is. You need access. You're in the locker room. You can't say what you want about these guys. And I'm like, but who you should be really mad about in the competition of all this stuff is guys like me, because I did not go to school for sports journalism. I have no business talking about the Cubs in any kind of professional light. I am simply just a fan who likes to sing and rock out about the team. I'm like, but I'm not the news. The news is the news, but a lot of those guys, they want to be the news, but instead they're trying to be the fans. Like, it's a weird line to draw. So I don't draw it, but I also didn't go to school for it or trying to have a job at it, really.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Thank God.
I've had a few accidental jobs in it. They're like, hey, this guy's pretty good. Like, let's have him on the show. So, I get a fair amount of publicity, but I'm coming at it more of like an influencer. Maybe I'll sell you a pad or something like that. Sell you a rock song, make you come and see my band, that kind of thing.
Well, you're fantastic. I love it. I mean, it's the Bleacher Bum Band. Is that right?
Yeah. It's me and Bleacher Jeff, who is a character in of himself. He's always in the left field. Well, Wrigley Field, good friends with Ian Happ. Knows all the bullpen guys because the bullpen's right underneath Bleacher Jeff as he sits there in the stands. Very distinct looking character, very tall, big hair, big beard. So he's very recognizable, really, from anywhere in the stadium. You could see him. And he plays a mean guitar. We became friends out there in the bleachers a couple of years ago. I was already playing my songs, but usually solo. And then I had another band called Bad Teenage Mustache, which is a comedy band that just did kind of parody songs. And I think irreverent comedy is what maybe at this point, I probably can't even play some of those songs with some of the societal changes we've made. But that's comedy, though. It changes. That's fine. I'm fine with that. That's cool. But the Cubs thing, here's the beauty of it. It's like the Cubs already have fans. And so because of that, it's a much easier kind of sell to people. If I sing about the Cubs and I write music about the Cubs, then people already like the Cubs. They'll like your music if they like rock and roll and the Cubs. So like we have a bunch of punk songs, and I write pretty eclectically, like country, pop songs that, just different, whatever it's coming out of me. We got a new album coming out. We have one album called Bleacher Bum Band that's you can find anywhere, like on iTunes or Apple Music or Spotify. It's all over there. But we got another one coming out in June this year. We're busy recording it right now. And the other guy in the band is Jarrett Gable. Him and I were childhood friends. And we used to go to Wrigley Field in the 80s when we were 12 and 13 because we had older parents that didn't really know. Like, we didn't have boomer parents who would have been a little bit more protective and not knowing that we had the silent generation parents who were a little older who thought like, yeah, when I was a kid, I just went down to North Street Beach with my brothers and I was 12 and it was fine. So they would send me, we were pretty free range children. And we just spent a lot of time at Wrigley Field, me and Jarrett, and he found me years later. Actually, he came to my house and I'm like, ring the doorbell. And I looked down, I'm living on the third floor of an apartment building. And I look down and I see this weird guy down there with this woman. And I'm like, I don't know. It's probably like religious freaks, like trying to give me a pamphlet or political people or something. So I'm not going down there. It's Sunday afternoon. I'm not doing it. So I didn't answer the door and come down. 2 days later, and I had been leaving out the back entrance, I guess. I didn't realize there was a note on my front door. And it was from Jarrett. And he's like, hey, you might remember the story about when we went to the doubleheader in Milwaukee in 1987 and like all this. I was like, yeah. I'm like, he would be the only person that would know that story. So it turns out it's him. And it turns out he played bass. And it turns out I needed a bass player.
Oh, my gosh.
It all worked out great. And then So that's pretty much the band. We got a new drummer named Tony. He's awesome. But we played opening day packed the house at this place, Output Lounge. We played all our Cubs songs. Everybody had a good time singing along. And then we got a CD release party at Nisei Lounge, which is right in Wrigleyville, after the Cubs play the Orioles on the 17th of June.
Wow. Well, I salute you, my friend. I love it. You got music first, being an artist and such, but tying it right in with your fanhood. You talk about the journalism, and I think sometimes people get a little bit stuck with all of that, especially when there is a lot of people in sports when they're announcing for a team. I feel like they're handcuffed. I think you, speaking as an avid fan who's not associated with the organization per se, can say a lot more and be a lot more entertaining than we'll ever get from folks that are doing the news part of it. I don't know enough about Marquee, but I know that when you have a regional sports network, there's agreements they have with the team and things probably that they can say and can't say. It's probably not like the Masters where Augusta says, that guy's gone. He said they use bikini wax on the green, so he's gone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's, we have a joke. We call it state TV. Like we call Marquee state TV. It's like Vladimir Putin's channel. He's never going to say anything bad about Putin, right? They'll have a little bit of pushback from some of the players who won't like a decision or will be left scratching their head as a player who's talking about it. But the thing about Marquee Network, and they couldn't have really launched at a worse time. They launched in 2020. And so that was part of the biblical losses, that they had invested a lot of money in this TV channel. And everybody's pretty excited about it, except for the fact that a lot of carriers won't carry it. Yeah. And a lot of bars won't pay for it either, because it's a different rate for them to carry that channel in a bar. So even some bars in Wrigleyville, you can't get the game on the TV. So that was pretty unpopular. The Cubs, the reason we have fans all over the world, or really over the country, I should say, is because of WGN and the Superstation. Harry Carey and being on in the daytime and stuff for years and years and years. We still play a lot of day baseball, but those games used to be free over the air on antenna. Now, that ship has sailed a long time ago. We all know that. But I'm one of those dinosaurs, and I don't really watch television at all. I just watch Cubs games. So like I was watching those games over the air. I had a freaking antenna with rabbit ears and I have a TV in my bedroom, but I don't have a TV anywhere else. Like I don't watch TV. Yeah. So, I mean, I didn't grow up really with a TV. So like, it just never became too much of a habit, but I do like watching the Cubs game. So they really did. Those were like unpopular moves, especially to the old timers who were doing things a different way. Like my mom now, she can't get Marquee. So she's listening on radio. So they really would love that to go away, because you can't make any money. Now they got like adult diaper ads. It's getting worse. Let me tell you, but what Marquee did is they ran it like their ESPN. So they kind of hired everybody. Yeah. They got Joe Girardi. They got Ryan Sandberg. They got Cliff Floyd. They got three Mamboos. They got Rick Sutcliffe. They hired Boog Sciambi, who did a lot of national work and radio. Because he's a national guy, he replaced Len Casper, who was pretty beloved here in Chicago. But Len went to go do White Sox radio, which he said he preferred. So I don't know. There must have been some inside stuff there too. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think once again, these stories are going to come out little by little as people start to talk about their former employers, about what really happened. So they hired everybody. They hired Boog, who doesn't really seem to be a fan of the team. And you kind of, for your home, you want a homer. The Cub fans especially want a homer, because we had Harry Carey, we had Ron Santo. Yeah. And those guys lived and died with the team. Now, Harry, he broadcast for a lot of different teams. He broadcast for the White Sox, he broadcast for the Cardinals for years. But he became beloved towards the end of his career, like in Chicago, to the point that he's got a statue out in front of Wrigley Field, right in front of the bleachers. But that's the kind of dude we're looking for. That's who we thought Boog was going to be for us. And then he wasn't. And in fact, like, it's a lot of complaints from, and I listen to more of the games on the radio myself personally, because I love Pat Hughes, but a lot of people complain about Sciambi because he doesn't really seem to be calling the game. So he doesn't talk about what's happening in the game. They also do a lot of these like sideline interviews. They got these side reporters that are always, talking to a player. Then they got a dugout interview, or they got a player mic'd up, or just all these gimmicks. And Cub fans don't like that. They don't like it. We're traditionalists. Just get up there and tell us what's happening in the game. So there's a lot of split screens, a lot of dumb analytics that people don't care about. So they really tried so hard to make this network this thing that they thought was just this comprehensive, brilliant thing. And Cub fans did nothing but boo it. And it's just like, it's wild. And it's how most people are consuming the game. So,
but Danny, it's worked in other markets, man. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, that's just it. They hired New York guys. They hired New York guys to come make this marquee network, and it's hard to, these guys. You can't tell them that they made a wrong decision, because it's always going to be somebody else's fault, because they ran this for years and there's no way that I screwed up. They don't listen to the fans, and a lot of my Cub fan friends who are pretty involved and also do interview players and do interview some of the media and are more involved with that side of things. They just wonder like why we were not consulted, considering we are the main consumers of this.
Thank you. Thank you.
So it's just strange. But yeah, so I listen on radio. And I've been practicing Spanish for a bunch of years now. So I'm finally at an intermediate level enough where I can also listen to my friend Miguel Esparza call the game in Spanish as well. Then I just watch the highlights later of anything that cool that happened. It's usually, the highlights are usually on there within minutes after them happening. They're usually on the app. So just listen in Spanish, figure out what's going on, listen to Pat Hughes, and then watch it. So, and I'm at the ballpark a lot too. So
if they want the real dirt, though, they can come to your website and listen to you. And let's remind everybody, what is the name of your website, sir?
Yeah, we're SonRanto, SonRanto.com. And then that's like Ron Santo, but with the R and the S switched. Yeah, that's my Twitter handle as well, where I'm pretty darned active until I guess Elon Musk blows it up and we don't have Twitter accounts anymore. But I'm always out there like tweeting out pictures, and whatever I'm doing, I'm usually promoting. So,
well, man, I got to tell you, you keep it exciting. I love what you guys are doing. I love your Bleacher Bum band. You guys seem to be having fun. And I see the tweets. I see the things that Sarah Sanchez has said. Oh, well, maybe I'll ask you a question after all this, but it's been exciting to see what you guys do. And anybody, if you're a Cubs fan or if you just enjoy entertainment, SonRanto is the way to go. And there's plenty of different options and opportunities people can find even more when they get to your site.
Yeah, and we got a fun Discord too that we all hang out in a bunch. I also do another show. You bring up Sarah, Cup of Cubby Blue is our show. We just switched networks. We're on the Fans First network, which is brand new, and real excited about that. That's a brand new venture this year, actually just within the last couple months. And so we're doing that. I also do a Cubs pod. That's for our Patreon subscribers. So we have a daily show, which was just a recap and stuff. So we're always doing stuff and trying to really media. We just talked about how I said when print turned to digital, you have to change. So all of a sudden, when you have a situation where I can go live and do a live show that's interactive, where I can see live stream comments on my YouTube or on my Facebook, and this new technology existing in such a way that it's really easy to like plug and play.
Yeah.
And you don't have to have large amounts of technical know-how to put on a pretty well-produced show. When that became the case back in like 2020, we were early adopters of doing that. And people really appreciated it. So that is our show. SonRanto Show is now a live show that we do once a week too, and we have our ranters and our community of people that we commune with really as Cub fans, and it's a lot of fun. And it's in 2020 when everybody was sitting in front of their computers the whole time and not able to really do anything except go to the grocery store. When that was the situation, we started going live pretty much every day, because we had the technology to do so. So I'm always trying to think of like the new ways people are going to consume things. And I always like trying the new stuff, and I love people. So I always want to be interviewing interesting people. We had a poet on who wrote a book called Aisle 228. It's all Cubs inspired poetry. Sandra Marchetti, or Marchetti is how you say her name. And it's awesome. It's on Amazon and stuff. You can find it. And I just love talking to those different people. Cub fans are such a diverse group of people. You know, there's artists, there's famous people, there's, the ex-players are hanging out. Like I'm hanging out with Glendon Rush. I'm hanging out with like all these different dudes because they love Miggy. Miggy Montero is back from the 2016. He drunk at my friend Stu's house. So the Cubs are a special situation that it's fun to roll with. So I like doing everything. So yeah, everybody should just follow my stuff if you like the Cubs, or even if you don't like the Cubs and you like making fun of stuff.
Well, again, I want to remind everybody, we're talking with Danny Rockett of SonRanto.com, and he gave you kind of an idea of some of the things you're going to find there when you go there. Whether you're a Cubs fan, a baseball fan or not, Danny will keep you entertained. So I really appreciate having you here today on the show, Danny.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was really a lot of fun, Mark, and I love talking Cubs, so that's why I do it pretty much every day of my life.
All right. Well, maybe we'll leave this show here with a song of yours about Mr. Manfred and his enjoyment of the game.
Yeah, people like this one because this one is for all baseball fans.
Okay, Danny. Thanks again for joining us here on Baseball Biz on Deck, my friend.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Rob Manfred likes opening days in winter. Likes baseball games that don't go on too long. Rob Manfred likes more offense from the hitter. Likes juicing up the ball and hitting dogs. Intentional walks with just a finger. And old umpires who are always blowing calls. Likes a National League DH. But one thing Manfred hates, Rob Manfred hates baseball. Rob Manfred likes a pitch clock for the pitches. And batters who stay inside the box. Likes lessening the ball drag before stitches. And half the teams making the playoffs. Rob Manfred likes pitchers who face three batters and not paying minor leaguers at all. Likes to catch no block the plate, but one thing Manfred hates, Rob Manfred hates baseball. Yeehaw! Rob Manfred hates baseball. Rob Manfred likes TV deals and blackouts. He likes letting the Houston Astros cheat. He likes how ticket prices keep the fans out and Xing teams out of the minor leagues. Rob Manfred's gonna bring us robot umpires to tell CB Buckner that he's been wrong. He likes putting money in the bank, but one thing Manfred hates, Rob Manfred hates baseball. Let's punch it in the face. Rob Manfred hates baseball. He's one you gotta thank. Rob Manfred hates baseball.
We want to thank you all again for joining us here today on Baseball Biz on Deck. We want to thank you and also Mr. Danny Rockett, Cubs fan extraordinaire, musician, talent, and entertainer. You can enjoy him too. Remember, you go to SonRanto.com and hear a lot more of what he and his Bleacher Bun Band have to play. So thanks again, and we look forward to talking with you real soon.